Kethra had classified 47 worlds in her career with the Galactic Survey Corps. She had seen frozen moons where life survived in underground oceans. She had documented acid planets where organisms built shells from crystallized minerals. She had even visited a world where the dominant species breathed chlorine gas. None of it had prepared her for Sol 3. The survey vessel hummed quietly as it approached the unremarkable yellow star. Senior Surveyor Methaval sat in his command chair, barely glancing at the data streams crossing his screen. He had seen 1,000 systems just like this one, a medium-sized star, a handful of rocky planets, a few gas giants in the outer reaches. Nothing special. Initial classification suggests a Category 2 Deathworld, Methaval said with a yawn. Probably some bacterial mats and primitive ocean life. Run the standard scans and we can move on to the next system. Kethra nodded and activated the deep scanning array. The instruments had been designed by the greatest minds in the Galactic Union. They could detect life signs from orbit, measure atmospheric composition to the parts per trillion, and map geological activity down to the smallest tremor. In 3,000 years of galactic exploration, these instruments had never been wrong. The first readings came back normal. Nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, liquid water covering most of the surface, average temperature well within the habitable range. Kethra almost marked the planet as a potential colony world before the secondary scans finished processing. "Sir," she said slowly, "I think there might be an error in our instruments." Methaval sighed. Junior surveyors always thought they had found something unusual. They never had. "What is it now?" "The planet has seasons." "Many planets have seasons. Orbital eccentricity creates temperature variations." "Nothing special." "Not from orbit, sir. From axial tilt. The planet is tilted 23 degrees off its orbital plane." Methaval sat up slightly. That was unusual. Most habitable worlds had stable axes, kept in place by large moons or gravitational influences. A tilted axis meant wild temperature swings as different parts of the planet faced toward and away from the sun. It made evolution much harder. "Interesting," he admitted. "Continue the scans." Kethra did. The more data that came in, the more confused she became. The planet had a single large moon that created massive tidal forces on the oceans. The star produced significant radiation that reached the surface. The magnetic field was weaker than standard. The tectonic plates moved constantly, creating earthquakes and volcanic eruptions across the entire surface. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. "What doesn't make sense?" Each of these factors individually would make complex life difficult. Combined, they should make it impossible. But the biosignature readings show incredible biodiversity. Millions of distinct species, complex food webs, life in every possible environment. Methaval finally looked interested. He pulled the data to his own screen and studied it carefully. His expression shifted from boredom to curiosity to something that looked almost like concern. "Run the Sapien scan," he ordered. Kethra activated the neural detection array. It searched for the electromagnetic signatures of developed brains, the chemical traces of advanced cognition, the infrared patterns of technology use. The results should have been impossible. "Sir, I'm reading approximately 8 billion sapient life signs." "That can't be right. Run it again." She ran it again. The number didn't change. 8 billion sapient beings, Kethra whispered. And they're not concentrated in protected areas. They're spread across the entire planetary surface, in deserts, in frozen wastelands, on volcanic islands, in floodplains, everywhere. Methaval was quiet for a long moment. In his 40 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. Deathworlds occasionally produced sapient life. But those species always lived in the safest areas their planet could offer. They huddled in caves or built cities in the most stable regions. They didn't spread themselves across every deadly environment their world could offer. "Download everything," he finally said. "We're going to need to report this to the Council." The report took 3 days to compile. Kethra worked without sleep, documenting every impossible thing about Sol 3. The predator population was too high. The disease organisms mutated too fast. The weather patterns were too violent. The geological activity was too unstable. By every measure the Galactic Survey Corps used, this planet should have been a sterile rock. Instead, it teemed with life. Life that had somehow adapted to every challenge the planet could throw at it. Life that had spread to every corner of a world that should have killed it 1,000 times over. The Council's response came a week later. They rejected the report. Instrument malfunction, the official reply stated. The readings you describe are statistically impossible. No sapient species has ever evolved on a world with more than 7 major death factors. Sol 3, as you describe it, has at least 15. Please recalibrate your equipment and resubmit. Kethra felt something she had never experienced before in her orderly career. She felt angry. They think we made a mistake, she said to Methival. They think our instruments are broken. They think we're wrong because we have to be wrong, Methival replied. His voice was tired. The universe doesn't work the way Sol 3 works. Species don't evolve on worlds like that. The Council has 3,000 years of data telling them it's impossible. But it's not impossible. It's right there. 8 billion of them. Methival nodded slowly. Then we need to prove it to them. Run the cultural analysis protocols. If these beings are truly sapient, they should have developed technology, art, language. Things we can document beyond simple biosignatures. The cultural analysis took another week. When it was finished, Kethra sat in silence for a long time, staring at her screen. She had documented over 6,000 distinct languages, hundreds of different writing systems, architecture that ranged from simple shelters to structures taller than most Union buildings, vehicles that traveled on land, on water, and through the air, satellites orbiting the planet, radio signals broadcasting in every direction. And then she found the historical data. These beings called themselves humans. They had evolved on the grassy plains of one of the larger continents. They had no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no armor, no venom. They were soft, fragile creatures that should have been prey for any of the thousands of predators that shared their world. Instead, they had become the dominant species on the planet. They had done it through endurance, intelligence, and an absolutely terrifying refusal to die. Kethra read about persistence hunting, where humans simply followed prey animals until those animals collapsed from exhaustion. She read about the Ice Ages, where humans survived planetary cooling events that killed most other large animals. She read about the domestication of wolves, where humans somehow convince apex predators to become their partners. She read about the migrations, where humans spread across the entire planet using nothing but their own legs and primitive boats. "Sir," she said when she finally found her voice, "I need to file an escalation request." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that we haven't classified Sol 3 incorrectly. We've discovered that our entire classification system is wrong." Methival looked at her carefully. "Explain." "Our scale goes from Category 1 to Category 10. Category 10 is supposed to represent the absolute maximum hostile conditions where life can exist. We've only ever found 3 Category 10 worlds and none of them produce sapient life. I know this. Sol 3 is in Category 10. It's beyond the scale entirely. And not only did it produce sapient life, it produced a species that spread across every environment on the planet, that survived multiple extinction-level events, that developed advanced technology, and that is currently reaching toward space." Kethra pulled up her final piece of data, an image captured by long-range sensors. A small vessel, primitive by galactic standards, carrying 2 humans to the surface of their planet's moon. "They walked on their moon 60 years ago, she said. "With technology we would consider barely functional. They strapped themselves to controlled explosions and launched themselves into space. They did this not because they had to, but because they wanted to see what was there." Methival stared at the image for a long time. "File the escalation," he finally said. "Make sure they understand what we found. Not just a new species. Not just a new Deathworld. Something the galaxy has never seen before." Kethra began typing her request. She chose her words carefully, knowing that what she wrote would either be dismissed as fantasy or would change everything the Union thought it knew about evolution and survival. "Subject, Sol 3 Classification Anomaly," she wrote. "Request, emergency review by High Survey Council. Reason, current classification scale is insufficient. Sol 3 is not simply a death world. Based on accumulated evidence, Sol 3 must be classified as an ultimate death world. Its dominant sapient species, known as humans, should be considered the most adaptable life form ever documented. She paused, then added one final note. Recommendation: whatever we thought we knew about the limits of life in hostile environments is wrong. Humans have not merely survived their world, they have conquered it, and they are coming. She sent the message and watched it disappear into the communication array. Somewhere, in a grand council chamber on a safe, stable world, that message would arrive. It would be read by beings who had never known true danger, who had evolved on gentle planets with mild weather and abundant resources. Those beings were about to learn that the universe was far stranger and far more wonderful than they had ever imagined. They were about to learn about Earth, and nothing would ever be the same. The High Survey Council had not assembled in emergency session for over 200 years. The last time had been the discovery of the Void Eaters, creatures that lived in the empty space between stars and consumed any ship that crossed their territory. That discovery had changed galactic shipping routes forever. This discovery, the council members were beginning to realize, might change far more than that. The Great Chamber on Nexus Prime held representatives from 12 elder species. These were the founders of the Galactic Union, the civilizations that had achieved space travel first and had guided younger species for millennia. They sat in a circle around a central holographic display, their various body forms adapted to different environments, but all sharing the same expression of disbelief. Elder historian Vothmal of the Kalenti stood at the display controls. His people were archivists, collectors of knowledge from across the galaxy. In his 3 centuries of life, he had studied the rise and fall of empires, the evolution of hundreds of species, and the deep patterns of galactic history. Nothing in his vast knowledge had prepared him for what he was about to present. "Honored council members," he began, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into the common tongue. "I have spent the last standard month reviewing the survey data from Sol 3. I have checked every reading, consulted every database, and applied every analytical method known to our civilization. My conclusion is simple and terrifying." He activated the display. A blue and green planet appeared, rotating slowly in the holographic field. It looked peaceful, beautiful even, the kind of world that any species would be happy to call home. "This world should not exist," Vothmal said, "and the beings who live on it should not be possible." He began cycling through data visualizations, graphs showing temperature variations that would kill most species, maps of tectonic activity that reshaped the planetary surface, charts of predator populations that exceeded every model of ecological stability, records of mass extinction events that had wiped out most life at least 5 times in the planet's history. Each of these factors alone would classify Sol 3 as a death world. Vothmal continued. Combined, they create conditions that our models predicted could never support complex life. Yet complex life not only exists there, it thrives, and it has produced this. The display changed to show a human, a young female, the data indicated, though the council members had difficulty reading human expressions. She was smiling at something off camera, her eyes bright and alive. "This is a human," Vothmal said. "They are soft, fragile, easily damaged. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no special senses. They see in a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum. They hear only a limited range of sounds. They are slower than most predators on their world and weaker than many prey animals. By every measure we use to evaluate survival capability, they should have gone extinct millions of years ago." "Then how did they survive?" asked Ambassador Threll of the Kethmari. She was old, her scales faded to a pale gray, but her mind was as sharp as ever. "They refused to die." The simple statement hung in the air. Vothmal let it settle before continuing. "I have studied human history extensively. Their evolutionary path is unlike anything in our records. When they emerged on the plains of their largest continent, they were prey. Large predators hunted them. Larger herbivores competed with them for food. They had nothing except their endurance and their minds." He showed images of ancient humans, crude tools in their hands, facing creatures that dwarfed them. "They developed a hunting technique we have never seen before. They would follow prey animals for hours, sometimes days, never letting them rest. Humans are not fast, but they can maintain a steady pace longer than almost any other creature on their world. They simply outlasted their prey. The animals would collapse from exhaustion, and the humans would walk up and kill them with rocks. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. The image of these soft creatures relentlessly pursuing stronger animals until those animals simply gave up was disturbing on a fundamental level. Then came the Ice Ages, Vothmal continued. Periodic cooling events that covered much of the planet in frozen water. Most large animals died. Humans did not. They wrapped themselves in the skins of dead animals and built shelters from whatever materials they could find. They created fire and learned to carry it with them. They survived conditions that killed everything else. The display showed humans huddled around flames in frozen landscapes, their eyes reflecting the firelight. They did not merely survive, Vothmal emphasized. They spread. During the coldest periods of their planet's history, they migrated across land bridges to new continents. They walked into frozen wastelands and made homes there. They crossed oceans on primitive boats and settled islands thousands of kilometers from any other land. By the time the ice retreated, humans were everywhere. Ambassador Threll raised a thin arm. This is impressive, but it is also concerning. A species this adaptable, this determined to survive. What happens when they encounter other civilizations? An excellent question, Vothmal replied, and the answer is what makes this report truly urgent. Humans are not just survivors. They are builders. They do not simply adapt to their environment, they change it to suit themselves. He showed images of human cities, massive structures rising from barren deserts, towers of glass and metal in frozen northern regions, farms carved out of jungle and mountain alike, dams that held back rivers, bridges that spanned chasms, roads that crossed entire continents. They reshape their world, Vothmal said. They do not accept limits. When they encounter an obstacle, they either go around it, go through it, or eliminate it entirely. This mindset has allowed them to dominate every environment on their planet, and now they are reaching for space. The display changed again. A small capsule carrying a human in a bulky suit, floating against the black backdrop of space. Early spacecraft, primitive and dangerous, carrying humans beyond their atmosphere. Landing craft touching down on their moon. Robotic probes sent to explore their entire solar system. They achieved spaceflight 60 of their years ago, Vothmal said. Since then, they have walked on their moon, sent probes to every planet in their system, and established a permanent presence in orbit. Their technology is primitive by our standards, but their rate of advancement is unprecedented. They are learning faster than any species we have ever documented. What are you recommending? Asked High Arbiter Kesmoth, the unofficial leader of the council. Vothmal hesitated. I am uncertain. That is why I requested this emergency session. I am a historian, not a strategist. But I believe we must make a decision about how to approach these humans before they achieve interstellar travel. Because once they do, they will find us whether we want them to or not. The council chamber erupted into debate. Some members wanted immediate contact, arguing that peaceful relations with such an adaptable species would benefit the Union. Others demanded quarantine, sealing the Sol system behind a blockade until the council could better assess the threat. A few suggested observation, watching the humans from a distance until more information was available. Ambassador Threll listened to all of it, her ancient eyes studying the human image still floating in the center of the chamber. That young female smiling at something off camera. What was she smiling about? What did humans find amusing? What made them happy? More importantly, what made them dangerous? I have a question, Threll finally said, and the chamber fell silent. When the oldest and most respected ambassador spoke, everyone listened. Elder Vothmal, in all your research, have you found any evidence of what humans do when they feel threatened? The historian's expression changed. Something that looked almost like fear crossed his features. Yes, he said quietly. I have. He activated a new display, a mushroom-shaped cloud rising into the sky. Cities reduced to ash, radiation spreading across the landscape. They call these nuclear weapons, Vothmal said. devices that release the fundamental energy of matter itself. They created them 80 of their years ago. They have built tens of thousands of them. They have pointed them at each other, and they have come very close to using them. The council stared at the images in horror. Humans invented weapons capable of destroying their entire civilization, Vothmal continued. They invented them deliberately. They tested them on their own planet. And then they built more, knowing exactly what they could do. They are insane, someone whispered. No, Vothmal replied. They are humans. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They learned that the universe was dangerous and that survival required dangerous tools. They are not insane. They are prepared. Ambassador Threll made her decision. We will observe, she announced. We will send a hidden station to the Sol system, and we will watch these humans. We will learn their capabilities, their culture, their intentions, and only then will we decide whether to make contact. The council voted unanimously in favor. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Vothmal approached Ambassador Threll privately. You know observation may not be enough, he said quietly. These humans are reaching outward. They may find us before we are ready. I know, Threll replied, but we need more information. We need to understand what kind of species can look at a weapon capable of ending all life on their world and decide to build it anyway. And what if the answer frightens us? Threll looked at the image of the humans still displayed in the empty chamber, that young female still smiling. Then we will learn to be frightened, she said, because ready or not, humans are coming. The universe is about to meet the children of the ultimate Deathworld, and nothing will ever be the same again. She turned and walked out of the chamber, leaving the human image behind. The display continued for several minutes before automatically shutting down. But in that time, if anyone had been watching, they might have noticed something strange about that human smile. It was not the smile of a creature that feared the universe. It was the smile of a creature that could not wait to explore it. Observer Nethkai had watched humanity for 30 years. In that time, he had learned more about survival than 3 centuries of Union education had taught him. He had also learned to be afraid. The observation station was hidden in the asteroid belt of the Sol system, disguised as just another chunk of rock drifting through space. Its sensors were the most advanced the Union could provide, capable of monitoring every broadcast, every satellite, every ship launch from the third planet. Nethkai had seen it all. He had watched humans split the atom and fuse it back together. He had watched them build machines that could think almost as well as living minds. He had watched them edit the very code of life itself, rewriting the genetic instructions that had taken billions of years to evolve. Each advancement should have taken centuries. Humans achieved them in decades. But it was not their technology that disturbed Nethkai most. It was their hobbies. His current report focused on human recreational activities. The Union had always assumed that sapient species used their free time for rest, social bonding, or mental enrichment. Safe activities that posed no risk to the individual. This assumption, like so many others about humans, proved completely wrong. Subject: human leisure activities. Nethkai dictated into his recorder. Classification: deeply concerning. He pulled up footage from human broadcast networks. A human stood at the edge of a cliff, wearing nothing but a small suit and a harness attached to an elastic cord. The human jumped. Nethkai had watched this recording dozens of times, and his primary heart still stuttered every time. The human fell towards certain death, only to be yanked back at the last moment by the cord. They called it bungee jumping. They did it for fun. More footage. Humans climbing vertical rock faces thousands of meters high, with nothing but their hands and small metal devices. Humans diving into oceans deep enough to crush their bodies. Humans sliding down frozen mountains on thin boards at speeds that would kill them if they hit anything. Humans fighting each other with fists and feet, deliberately inflicting pain for sport and entertainment. The species exhibits a pattern I can only describe as recreational risk-seeking, Nethkai continued. They do not simply tolerate danger, they actively pursue it. They have created entire industries around activities that could easily result in death or serious injury. He switched to a new set of footage. Humans running through deserts for days without stopping. Humans swimming between islands through waters filled with predators. Humans racing vehicles at speeds that made crashes unsurvivable. A human falling from the edge of space itself, protected only by a pressurized suit, setting records for the longest free fall in their history. Current theory suggests this behavior evolved as a response to their planet's hostile conditions, Nethkai said. When survival itself is always uncertain, the mind adapts to treat danger as normal. Humans do not fear risk the way other species do. They seem to need it. A notification chimed on his console. New data from Earth. Nethkai checked it automatically, expecting the usual stream of broadcasts and signals. Instead, he found something that made his blood run cold. A human telescope was pointing directly at his station. Not the general area, not the asteroid belt, his specific position, his exact coordinates. He immediately ran a diagnostic on the station's stealth systems. Everything was functioning normally. The camouflage fields were active. The heat signatures were masked. The electromagnetic emissions were contained. There was no possible way the humans could have detected him, and yet they had. More data streamed in. Human communication networks were lighting up with discussions about the anomaly. Scientists were proposing theories. Amateur astronomers were training their own instruments on the asteroid belt. Within hours, the news had spread across the planet. Something strange was hiding in their solar system, and humans, being humans, wanted to know what it was. Nethkai's training told him to flee immediately. His mission parameters were clear. If discovery was imminent, evacuate and destroy all evidence. The Union could not risk first contact happening by accident. But he didn't flee. He couldn't, because what happened next was too fascinating to abandon. The humans started transmitting. Not random broadcasts, not the usual chatter of their civilization. Directed signals aimed precisely at his position. Mathematical sequences that any intelligent species would recognize as intentional. Prime numbers, geometric progressions, the fundamental constants of the universe. They were saying hello. Nethkai checked the transmissions again and again. They were definitely meant for him. The humans had detected his presence and, instead of panicking or preparing weapons, they were trying to communicate. More signals followed. Music, which Nethkai recognized from his studies of human culture. Images of families, cities, natural landscapes. A recording of human voices saying simple words in dozens of different languages. Greetings, welcomes, questions. One transmission included a mathematical puzzle, a complex problem that would require sophisticated reasoning to solve. It was followed by a simple message translated into basic symbolic logic. Can you understand us? We want to talk. Nethkai sat in his command chair, staring at the message. 30 years of observation had not prepared him for this moment. He had expected that when humans finally reached for the stars, they would do so with caution, fear, perhaps aggression. Every other species the Union had encountered showed some combination of these traits when they realized they were not alone in the universe. Humans showed none of them. Their messages radiated something else entirely: excitement, eagerness, joy. They weren't afraid of the unknown visitor hiding in their asteroid belt. They were thrilled. After spending their entire existence on a world that tried to kill them, after surviving every horror their planet could produce, the prospect of alien contact wasn't scary. It was exactly what they had been waiting for. Nethkai composed his report to the Union with hands that trembled slightly. He described the detection, the transmissions, the unmistakable message of welcome. He explained that his cover was compromised, but that he believed immediate evacuation might cause more problems than it solved. And then he added his assessment. For 30 years, I have watched this species and tried to understand them. I have seen their violence and their compassion, their ignorance and their brilliance, their cruelty and their kindness. I have struggled to form a coherent picture of what humanity truly is. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Today, I believe I finally understand. Humans are not aggressive, though they can be fierce in defense of what they love. They are not peaceful, though they yearn for harmony. They are not fearful, though they understand danger better than any species in the galaxy. Humans are curious. That is their defining trait. They want to know everything. They want to explore everything. They want to understand everything. Their planet tried to kill them, so they learned how to survive it. Their bodies were fragile, so they built tools to extend their capabilities. Their lifespans were short, so they created ways to pass knowledge between generations. And now they have discovered that they are not alone in the universe. They are not cowering. They are not preparing for war. They are sending messages of greeting and hoping someone will respond. The universe has underestimated what it means to evolve on the ultimate death world. We assumed such conditions would produce monsters. Instead, they produced a species that looks at the unknown and feels wonder instead of fear. Recommendation: direct contact may be inevitable. If so, it should happen on our terms, not through accident or discovery. The humans are reaching out. Perhaps it is time we reach back. He sent the report and returned to monitoring the human transmissions. They were still coming, still hopeful, still waiting for an answer. Nethkai thought about the young surveyor Kethra, whose original report had started this entire chain of events. He thought about Ambassador Threll and the Council, debating what to do about the impossible species from the impossible world. He thought about his own people, safe and comfortable on their gentle planet, who had never known what it meant to struggle for survival. And he thought about the humans below, sending their greetings into the void, absolutely certain that something wonderful was waiting for them among the stars. They were wrong, of course. The universe was vast and largely indifferent. It contained wonders, but also horrors. Species that would see humanity as a threat, resources, or prey. Dangers that even the ultimate death world had not prepared them for. But watching those hopeful transmissions, Nethkai found himself believing something he had never expected. Perhaps the humans would be fine anyway. Perhaps a species that had survived everything Earth could throw at them would find a way to survive the galaxy too. Perhaps their curiosity and determination would carry them through challenges that would break any other civilization. Or perhaps they would change the galaxy itself. A new transmission arrived, a human voice speaking slowly and clearly, repeating the same message in dozens of languages. "We know you're out there. We've been waiting to meet you. We have so many questions. We have so much to share. Please respond. We want to be friends." Nethkai smiled, an expression he had learned from studying humans. It felt strange on his face, but somehow right. Friends. The humans wanted to be friends. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. The diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere on a spring morning. Ambassador Threll watched through the observation window as clouds parted to reveal the planet below. Green forests, blue oceans, white-capped mountains. It looked so peaceful from above. She knew better now. She knew about the earthquakes that could level cities, the storms that could flatten entire regions, the volcanoes that slept beneath the surface, waiting to erupt, the microscopic organisms that could kill within days. Every beautiful landscape below contained 1,000 ways to die, and somewhere down there, 8 billion humans went about their daily lives as if none of it mattered. "Entering designated landing zone," the pilot announced. "Human reception committee detected. They seem enthusiastic." Threll moved to the main viewport. A crowd had gathered at the landing site, thousands of humans standing behind barriers, waving and cheering. Signs in multiple languages welcomed the visitors. Children sat on parents' shoulders to see better. Media drones circled overhead, broadcasting every moment to the entire planet. This was not what she had expected. When the Union made first contact with new species, those species typically reacted with fear, suspicion, or carefully guarded diplomacy. Nobody cheered, nobody waved, but humans, she was learning, rarely did what anyone expected. The vessel touched down gently. Threll composed herself, adjusting her formal robes and checking her translator one final time. She had prepared for this moment for months, studying human customs, practicing their greetings, learning their most common languages. She had anticipated every possible scenario, except this one, the one where the humans genuinely seemed happy to meet her. The hatch opened. Threll stepped out onto the platform that had been prepared for the historic moment. The roar of the crowd washed over her, a wall of sound that her species would have found overwhelming. She forced herself to remain calm. A small group of humans approached the vessel. They wore formal clothing that Threll recognized from her studies as indicating importance and authority. The one in front, a tall female with gray-streaked hair, extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. Ambassador Threll, the human said, her translator converting the words perfectly. On behalf of humanity, welcome to Earth. My name is Director Chen. We have been waiting for this day for a very long time. Threll took the offered hand carefully. The human grip was firm but not aggressive, warm, genuine. Director Chen, Threll replied, on behalf of the Galactic Union, I thank you for this welcome. I must confess your enthusiasm is somewhat unexpected. Director Chen smiled. It was a strange expression to Threll's eyes, showing teeth in a way that would indicate aggression in many species. But humans smiled when they were happy. Another thing she had to remember. Ambassador, we've been staring at the stars for thousands of years, wondering if anyone else was out there. Now we know the answer. How could we not be excited? The diplomatic meetings began that same day. Threll had expected formal, cautious negotiations. What she got was more like an avalanche of questions. Human scientists wanted to know everything about Union technology, biology, culture, and history. Human artists asked about alien music, literature, and visual expression. Human philosophers questioned the nature of consciousness across species. Human children sent drawings and asked what the ambassador's favorite color was. They are overwhelming, Threll reported to the council in her evening transmission. Not aggressive, but intense. They have no patience for slow diplomatic processes. They want answers immediately. They want to learn everything at once. They want to share everything they know in return. The council advised caution. The Union had protocols for first contact, procedures, timelines. Information should be shared gradually, allowing both sides to adjust. The humans had different ideas. Within days, they had proposed joint research projects, cultural exchanges, and trade agreements. They wanted to send humans to Union worlds and welcome Union visitors to Earth. They wanted to combine human and alien technologies to see what new discoveries might emerge. They wanted everything, and they wanted it now. How do you move so fast? Threll finally asked Director Chen during a rare quiet moment. Most species take years, sometimes decades, to process first contact. You've adapted in days. Director Chen laughed. Another expression that took getting used to. Ambassador, we've been adapting for our entire existence? New continent? Adapt. Ice age? Adapt. Plague? Adapt. Our whole history is one long series of adjusting to things that should have killed us. Meeting aliens is just the next thing on the list. But the implications alone should require extensive consideration. The social disruption, the philosophical challenges, the potential threats. Sure, people are worried. People are always worried about something, but they're also excited, curious, hopeful. Director Chen looked out the window at the city beyond. We've spent so long thinking we might be alone in the universe. Now we know we're not. That's not a threat, Ambassador. That's the best news we've ever received. The good feelings lasted until the Krath message arrived. The transmission came through Union diplomatic channels, broadcast to every member world simultaneously. Ambassador Drethkal of the Krath Dominion appeared on screens across the galaxy, his scarred face twisted with contempt. The Krath Dominion rejects the Council's decision to welcome the humans into galactic civilization, he declared. These creatures are Deathworlders, dangerous, unpredictable. They have no place among civilized species. Threll watched the broadcast with Director Chen. The human's expression had changed, the easy smile replaced by something harder. We demand that the humans be confined to their home system, Drethkal continued. They will not be permitted to expand beyond their current territory. Any attempt to do so will be met with force. The Krath Dominion has protected the galaxy from dangerous species before. We will do so again. The transmission ended. Silence filled the room. Who are the Krath? Director Chen asked quietly. Threll hesitated. The Krath were a subject the Union preferred not to discuss with new members, but the humans deserved to know what they faced. The Krath Dominion is an empire at the edge of Union space, she explained. They are a warrior species, strong, proud. They believe that power is the only thing that matters in the universe. For centuries, they have bullied smaller species, taking what they want through threat of force. The Union has never directly confronted them because they are too powerful and a war would devastate both sides. And now they've decided we're a threat. Yes, the Krath fear only one thing: species that might challenge their dominance. A Deathworld species like yours, with your adaptability and your rapid advancement, represents exactly the kind of challenge they cannot tolerate. Director Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. What happens if they attack? The Union would condemn the action. We would offer humanitarian aid, but we could not intervene militarily. Our treaty with the Krath prevents direct conflict, so we'd be on our own. Yes, Director Chen nodded slowly. Then unexpectedly, she smiled. Ambassador, can I tell you something about humans? Of course. We evolved alongside things that wanted to kill us. Big cats that hunted us at night, parasites that ate us from the inside, weather that could destroy everything we built. We learned very early that the universe doesn't care about fairness. It doesn't care about what you deserve. It only respects what you can survive. She turned to face Threll directly. The Krath think they're scary. They think their ships and their weapons make them dangerous. But they evolved on a safe world, didn't they? A place where survival was easy enough that they had energy left over for conquest. That is correct. The Krath homeworld is classified as Category 1, minimal environmental challenges. Then they've never really been tested. They've never faced something that made survival itself uncertain. They've never had to dig deep and find out what they're truly made of. Director Chen looked out the window again. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. We have. Every single day of our existence. The Krath want to threaten us? Fine. We've been threatened by experts, by ice ages and plagues and asteroids and our own stupid decisions. We're still here. She turned back to Threll, and there was something in her eyes that the ambassador had never seen in any species before. Not fear, not anger, something that looked almost like anticipation. Tell your council that humanity is not afraid. We didn't survive the ultimate death world just to be bullied by some pampered warriors who've never known real danger. If the Krath want to teach us a lesson about power, we'll be happy to teach them a lesson about strength. Threll stared at the human. In that moment, she understood something that all her studies had failed to reveal. Humans were not just survivors. They were not just adaptable. They were something the galaxy had never encountered before. A species that had been forged in the fires of the ultimate death world and emerged not broken, but tempered. The Krath had no idea what they had awakened. The Krath war fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of predators descending on wounded prey. 300 vessels, each one bristling with weapons that could glass a continent in minutes. Admiral Krethvoss stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue marble of Earth grow larger on his view screen. This would be easy. The humans had perhaps a dozen vessels capable of space combat, primitive things held together by desperate engineering and stubborn will. They had no experience with interstellar warfare, no allies willing to fight beside them, no hope. Signal the human leadership, Krethvoss ordered. Inform them that they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we will begin orbital bombardment of their population centers. The message went out. The fleet advanced. And then something unexpected happened. The humans responded. Not with surrender, not with pleas for mercy, not with desperate negotiations. A single transmission, broadcast from Earth on all frequencies. Admiral Krethvoss, this is Commander Sarah Mitchell of the United Earth Defense Force. Your surrender terms have been received and rejected. If you proceed with your attack, you will face the full resistance of humanity. Fair warning has been given. Krethvoss laughed. The sound echoed through his bridge, and his officers joined in. These creatures were insane. They had nothing. They were nothing, and yet they dared to speak of resistance? Increase speed, he commanded. Target their orbital stations first, then their population centers. Show them what happens to species that challenge the Krath dominion. The fleet surged forward. Sensors detected the human ships moving to intercept, pathetically outnumbered. Krethvoss watched them come with something approaching pity. Brave, perhaps, but bravery meant nothing against overwhelming force. The first shots were fired. Krath energy weapons struck the lead human vessels, shields flaring under the assault. The humans returned fire with projectile weapons, primitive kinetic systems that seemed almost quaint compared to Krath technology. And then the battle stopped making sense. The damaged human ship didn't retreat. It didn't try to escape. Instead, it turned directly toward the nearest Krath cruiser and accelerated. Its engines burned beyond their rated capacity, pushing the vessel faster and faster. The captain had to know what would happen. He did it anyway. The collision vaporized both ships. Before Krethvos could process what he had seen, another human vessel did the same thing, and another. They were ramming his cruisers deliberately, trading their lives for his ships. "What are they doing?" one of his officers whispered. "This is insane." It was insane, but it was also working. Each human vessel that died took a Krath ship with it. The primitive kinetic weapons were doing more damage than expected, punching through shields designed to deflect energy beams. And the humans weren't stopping. They kept coming, kept fighting, kept dying in ways that made no tactical sense. Then he heard the human communications. His translation systems had been passively monitoring enemy frequencies, and what he heard there was unlike anything in his experience. Human voices, shouting and laughing and singing, making jokes in the middle of combat, cheering each other on as they dove towards certain death. One commander was reciting poetry while her ship burned around her. Another was giving a play-by-play commentary as if this were some kind of sporting event. They were enjoying this. "Admiral, we've lost 15 cruisers," his tactical officer reported. "Human losses are 47 vessels, but they're not stopping. They're adapting their tactics in real time. Every ship we destroy, the others learn from it." Krethvos stared at the view screen. His fleet was winning. The numbers clearly favored the Krath, but his crews were starting to hesitate. They had never faced an enemy like this. Enemies were supposed to break when they started losing. Enemies were supposed to fear death. Humans apparently didn't get that message. A new wave of human ships emerged from behind Earth's moon, reserves that hadn't been detected. They were even more primitive than the first wave, some of them clearly civilian vessels, hastily armed with whatever weapons could be attached. They shouldn't have been any threat at all. They attacked anyway. One of those civilian ships, a former cargo hauler, managed to get close enough to a Krath battlecruiser to fire its improvised weapons directly into the engine section. The resulting explosion took out 2 more vessels nearby. The cargo hauler was destroyed, but not before its crew was recorded transmitting a final message. "Worth it." 2 words. That was all. And somehow, those 2 words were more terrifying than anything Krethvos had ever heard in battle. "Admiral," his communication officer said hesitantly, "I'm receiving requests from multiple captains. They're asking permission to withdraw." "Withdraw? We outnumber them 5-1. "Yes, Admiral, but our crews are—" He hesitated. "They're afraid." Krethvos looked at the view screen again. The human fleet was down to perhaps 30 operational vessels. His own fleet still had over 200. By every measure of conventional warfare, the Krath were winning decisively. But his crews were watching humans die with smiles on their faces. They were watching primitive ships ram superior vessels without hesitation. They were listening to enemy communications filled with laughter and defiance, and absolutely no fear. The Krath had never seen anything like it. They had evolved on a gentle world where strength meant dominance and dominance meant survival. They had never needed to be brave, not truly brave, because they had never faced anything they couldn't overwhelm with superior numbers and technology. The humans had evolved on the ultimate Deathworld. They had faced extinction 100 times. They had survived ice ages and plagues and their own nuclear weapons. Compared to their planet, what was one alien fleet? Krethvos made his decision. "All ships, cease fire. Signal the human commander. Request immediate negotiations." His officers stared at him in disbelief. "Admiral, we're winning." "No," Krethvos said quietly. "We're not. We can destroy them, yes. We can bombard their planet and kill billions. But we cannot defeat them. They will fight until the last human is dead, and their children will grow up learning to hate us, and someday they will build better ships and they will come for us. This is not an enemy we can conquer. This is an enemy we must learn to live with." The ceasefire signal went out. The human ships, what remained of them, held their positions. A moment later, Commander Mitchell's voice came through the communication system. Admiral Krethvos, this is an unexpected development. State your terms. I offer unconditional ceasefire. The Krath Dominion will withdraw from the Sol system immediately. We will recognize human sovereignty over your current territory. We ask only for negotiations toward peaceful coexistence. Silence, then Mitchell spoke again. That's it? No demands? No reparations? No punishment? No. May I ask why? Krethvos thought about everything he had witnessed. The suicidal courage, the laughter in the face of death, the absolute refusal to break, to surrender, to accept defeat even when defeat was inevitable. Because we finally understand what a Deathworld species truly means, he said. You don't know how to give up. The galaxy will either learn to live with you, or it will spend eternity trying to destroy you. I choose coexistence. Another pause. When Mitchell spoke again, there was something different in her voice. Admiral, you just made the smartest decision any enemy has ever made about humanity. Stand by for rescue operations. We have wounded that need medical attention, and I'm guessing some of your crews do too. 6 months later, Krath and human ships flew in joint formation for the first time. The treaty had been signed, the dead had been mourned, and something unexpected had emerged from the ashes of near war. Ambassador Threll visited Earth for the ceremony. She walked through a human city that had been rebuilt after the war, its scars already healing, its people already moving forward. She found Commander Mitchell, now promoted to Admiral, standing at a memorial for the human ships lost in battle. You showed them mercy, Threll said. The Krath tried to destroy your species, and you offered them peace. Mitchell nodded slowly. Ambassador, we've been fighting our own planet since we came down from the trees. We've learned a few things along the way. One of them is that revenge feels good, but it doesn't build anything that lasts. Another is that today's enemy can become tomorrow's ally if you give them the chance. The Krath killed thousands of your people, and now Krath doctors are helping in our hospitals. Krath engineers are working with ours on new technologies. Krath children are learning about Earth in their schools. Mitchell smiled. We didn't survive the ultimate death world by holding grudges. We survived by adapting, cooperating, and building something worth protecting. Threll looked at the memorial. Names carved in stone, humans who had died defending their world. She thought about everything she had witnessed since first contact, the fear and wonder, the violence and mercy, the absolute determination of a species that simply refused to accept limits. What happens now? She asked. Mitchell looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to appear in the gathering darkness. Now we do what we've always done. We explore, we learn, we grow, we find new challenges and we overcome them. We make friends and we protect them. We make mistakes and we learn from them. She turned to face Threll. The galaxy thought they were meeting a dangerous species from a death world. They were right, but not in the way they expected. We're not dangerous because we can destroy. We're dangerous because we can survive anything, adapt to anything, and never stop reaching for something better. She extended her hand and Threll took it. Welcome to the human era, Ambassador. We're just getting started. Above them, the stars shone down on a world that had tried for billions of years to kill everything that lived on it. That world had failed. And the creatures it had forged in its endless crucible of death were finally taking their place among the stars. Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as exactly what they had always been. Survivors, dreamers, builders, humans. The children of the ultimate death world had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.